In this session, we're going to walk through an overview of the administrative distance on Arista switches. As we build resilient topologies, we often end up with two, three, or more paths to reach a destination. Before anything else is considered, such as static routes versus OSPF routes, or OSPF routes versus BGP routes, when multiple paths to the same destination exist, the longest prefix match always wins. This longest prefix match rule remains true regardless of how the route was learned. For example, a route announcement for a /25 network will always be preferred over a more summarized /24 network. But what happens when we have multiple announcements of the same length? Administrative distance, often referred to as AD, is a tool we can leverage to influence the routing table when we have multiple matching prefix routes learned by multiple protocols. Most vendors implement some form of AD. In a multi-vendor environment, you'll want to be sure and check each vendor's documentation. Do not assume that the administrative distance values are set the same. Arista provides you with default administrative distance settings as well as the option to override those default AD settings. If you decide to change from the default administrative distance, be sure to consider if you need that change on all devices in the network or in portions of the network. When comparing administrative distance, Arista's implementation elects the route with the lowest AD. Arista's default AD assignments as of 4.15.3f are connected routes equals 0, or in other words, no AD is assigned. A static route with the next hop as an interface also equals 0. It's treated as a connected route. A static route with the next hop of an IP address equals 1. BGP equals 200, and that's for external, internal, and local BGP routes. ISIS, or intermediate system to intermediate system, equals 115 for internal level 1, internal level 2, external level 1, and external level 2 routes. For OSPF, the administrative distance by default is 110. That's for intra-area, inter-area, external type 1, and external type 2 routes. And if you happen to be running RIP's default AD is 120. By looking at the output of the show IP route command, show IP route, enter, you can see what AD has been assigned to a route. Printed in brackets, you will see AD and then a metric. In the example output, we see some connected routes, static routes, and OSPF routes. Notice the static route has an AD of 1, our OSPF routes have an AD of 110, and our connected routes don't have any AD assigned. Arista provides the option to override the default AD assignments. These changes are made either directly on the IP route configuration line in the case of static routes, or within the routing protocol configuration section, such as router OSPF or router BGP. If we have BGP, ISIS, OSPF, static routes, connected routes, or even RIP running in our network, we can use changes to the administrative distance to influence our routing table. But note, the administrative distance is only locally significant. In other words, the switches do not share their administrative distance configuration, nor the assigned administrative distance information with routing peers. Changing the administrative distance on one switch only influences that switch's routing decisions. It has no bearing on the administrative distance configuration nor the routing decisions of any other devices in the network. This is why, if you take advantage of administrative distance to influence routing decisions, be sure to consider everywhere you may need to make those changes.